Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, we talk about the very popular Chrono Trigger. And I consider myself a bit of an RPG aficionado, so certainly you'd imagine that I've played this one before. But as the title states, I have just played it for the first time this year, and I'm really excited to share some thoughts on it. I love doing these videos because it gives me so much of an opportunity to finally dive into games I've missed for years and years and years. And I gotta say, I'm disappointed I missed this one for so long. In fact, this copy I'm holding right here, I bought this in a retro game shop a good 4 years ago, and it's just sat on my shelf since. So I bought it with the plans to play, and it wasn't until now that I finally fired it up. So we got the Nintendo DS version here. I know normally in my X Years Later series, I like to dive into the box art and just crack it open and show you all that's there. But I thought this one was really neat, so I wanted to do it anyway, and then I'll talk a little bit about the game. So if you're new here, consider subscribing. We do a lot of these types of re-reviews here on the channel, plus retrospectives, plus other retro content. So again, consider subscribing. Happy to have you here. Let's talk about Chrono Trigger now, shall we? So yeah, as you can see, I busted out ye old 3DS XL. This bad boy has not gotten any use in a long while. It's the only DS I've ever found comfortable to use. So happy to bust it out. It's funny, I'm not even a big Zelda fan, but that's the only cool looking one they had. So had to fire that bad boy up to play, yes, right here, Chrono Trigger. So of course, cartridge on the inside. Main reason I wanted to show you all this was because it came with a really awesome poster that, of course, you know me. You know I love my complete in-box copies, and you know what I love when a little poster, a little goodie included in here. As you can see, it's the box art from the original copy of the game on the SNES. And I think it's the original yep, right here. So there you go. Look at that. Box art, just enlarged. As per usual, we like to just fold this up and keep it nice and safe back inside the box because I get scared something's going to happen to it, so I don't just like frame it and hang it up on a wall. I instead just put it in the box and I go, okay, you stay there. I'm just happy to have you. Anyway, that's what's coming with Chrono Trigger on DS. Not a super cheap game to get, especially with how DS games are going up in price. But anyway, played it for the first time, and I got to say, firing it up in the first couple of hours, I was thinking to myself, all right, what's the big deal? I'm not seeing it. What's so special about this game? And you're probably like, what? Hold on. But that's when it clicks with me too. A couple hours in, I'm like, that's the point. Nothing should be special about Chrono Trigger in a manner of speaking. Again, you may raise an eyebrow and go, what's this guy on? What I mean by that is this game was so influential and it's impacted so many games and how they're designed and how they're thought about that it all really originates from this game. And as I played it, it very much rattled my core, kind of like Sonic Adventure did, where I was like, okay, this is like shaking up my expectations so much, because with Chrono Trigger, with its impact, there's games I've definitely been a big fan of that I thought did things for the first time. I think of Radiant Historia Perfect Chronology. This was a 3DS game, and I believe it was originally a DS game, but this was the re-release of it. And I played that back in 2016 on my way to E3. And I grinded it out like a nice 40-hour JRPG, and I loved it. One of the things I loved about it was, get this, the ability to time travel and make choices in the story. And guess who did that first? Chrono Trigger, right? And there's so many JRPGs that are sprite-based that did what Chrono Trigger does. And that's where it really clicked with me, and the appreciation began to set in. Because I was like, man, the impact this game has had, the ripple effects to modern games I've played is so hard to describe, so hard to put into words, but it floored me on that alone because it went down to little things like when I was in the shop, right? And you're buying and selling things and you have an equip option in there, like just little forward thinking ideas for RPGs that were in there that weren't in other games. And there are still games that don't even have a simple feature like that, to what I think was one of the most defining features back then, and it's still great to this day. I want to shout out a game that's coming from the developers of Messenger. I forget the name of it, but pretty much it's using a similar battle system to Chrono Trigger. And I remember when I first saw this new Messenger game, I thought to myself, oh wow, it's cool. Battles just happen in the world in turn-based. That's amazing. Then I played Chrono Trigger and I went, oh, this isn't as, I guess, reinventing the wheel as I thought it was. So Chrono Trigger, if you didn't know this, it's not the fading to black and leaping into battle like you see in every other game. It just happens in the world space. I love this about this game because it's an active battle system. So there's timers going and there's like a pressure, like it's a real fight. Like you actually just got ambushed. It breaks the mold of what I think a lot of turn-based games do to people, which is this feeling of, why isn't this person attacking me? Why can I sit in these menus for hours on end if I really wanted to? Why is it doing this when I'm in a battle? It shouldn't be functioning this way. And I get that. Just, this isn't in an insulting way, but some people's brains just don't click on that level. Certainly, we all have those moments where we ignore the ludonarrative dissonance in games for our own enjoyment. For me, my brain turns off a little bit with turn-based RPGs. I don't even think of that stuff, but I get why people do. And Chrono Trigger manages to address all of that, which I think is what makes it also very special. I loved how the combat system worked here because that openness allows for moves to put you into different spots on the battlefield. And the reason this is so important is because you have techs, right? And these techs are pretty much your abilities in the game. But as certain enemies end up in certain places and your teammates are near you, you can instead wait for their turn bars to fill and do combo attacks. So you can do these X slashes with Frog, and you can do a flame spin with Luca. And I thought to myself, man, again, the teamwork here, this is something I loved from Persona. And I know it's been evolved a lot in Persona, so that's another reason why I just respect that series so much. But another really sound idea that came from this game that I'd never seen before it. Incredible. And I also want to shout out the way that they managed to create scale despite having sprites. So obviously with these sprite-based games, and Chrono Trigger is no stranger to this, you're gonna be running around these blocky areas in a grid that's like a cross, right? You're not gonna be running diagonal, you're not gonna be doing this 3D exploration. It's a sprite-based game. But the way it plays with this camera reminded me of how I felt with Yoko Taro games. It's about perspective sometimes that creates the moment. And what I'm thinking about is when you are breaking out of the jail and the camera goes into this side-scrolling view on the bridge as you fight the dragon tank. I mean, what an incredible shot, especially for its time. An amazing way to create this epic battle, I think, and give it a real sense of magnitude for you and your character. And the little hints that they put around the world, like what a well-designed game. Like I read a note and it says, hey, the head of this dragon tank is going to heal the rest of the body. Like take that out first. And it's only weak to swords and guns. And it's a little bit on the nose saying like, unless someone runs at it with a sword, gee, nothing will happen to it. And Chrono happens to have, boom, a sword right in his hand. So yeah, you know, the game's trying to spoon feed you it a little bit. But I don't think there's something wrong with that. And I get it because we live in a day and age now where Souls games don't hold your hand whatsoever, for example, especially even in the world building. You have to really piece those parts together. And what's happened due to that becoming so popular is any game that just directly says, like, do this for this to happen kind of gets criticized a little heavier, I've noticed. So I don't think it's wrong that the game has world details that tell you directly how to do something. So I like that stuff. Overall, on the story front, I'm a big fan of time traveling. Here we go. I'm going to really make my viewers feel ashamed of watching me. But I got to say it, I'm a fan of Final Fantasy 13 too. I do really like that game. One of the things I really liked about that game was the time travel mechanic. The reason for that is because you'd go to the same spot in different time periods and you'd see these drastic changes. And it made questing for me really fun. So I fell in love with Final Fantasy 13 too. I think it's a legitimately good game. I'm sorry, I just gotta say it. But knowing that Chrono Trigger, again, with its ability to go to different eras, I think it plays a pretty big impact on a game like Final Fantasy 13 too, where it's really shaken up my core for my love for JRPGs. I'm like, was it all a lie? Like, do I love Chrono Trigger the most now because it inspired all of these great games? Or do I love these great games because they took these ideas and put them into pockets that worked and spoke to me? I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be dramatic. Just this was the internal battle that I was going through. I didn't think Chrono Trigger would do this to me. It's not even the story. It's just the gameplay mechanics and the way they approach the presentation that speak to me so much. I mean, what a powerful, influential game. And I haven't even spoken about the art, not just the sprite work, but we have Akira Toriyama, who worked on the art for this game. You have Nobuo Uematsu, who did the score for this game. So you've got like the father of Final Fantasy music. You've got Dragon Ball art all in this game. It speaks to the soul in so many ways. It's such a rare collaboration here. I've heard some iffy things on the PC version. I know that Square Enix dropped about 5 patches I saw for it. On the DS version, apparently this is the definitive version, which is why I held out for it. It's why you've seen throughout this video just like random gameplay, random trailers, because can't really currently capture gameplay in an easy way on DS without there being a ton of reflections and all that stuff. But this experience was great in the terms of playability. I did like having the dual screen. I did select that option. I found it interesting when you fire up the options in this game. You have an option to turn off movies. Like, you can turn off all the anime cutscenes, which I don't know why you would ever do that, but you can do that. Yeah, so of course the story itself I should also run over a little bit because I found it to be cool. It wasn't like a deeply captivating, emotionally moving story, but what I loved about it was how quickly it threw you into it. And it relies a little bit on JRPG tropes, like in the beginning, someone gets sucked into a time portal, and so you've got Chrono standing up and going like, I'm going after her. I just met her, but I'm going after her. Why? Because I'm the JRPG protagonist. Like, why the hell are you going to stop me? And they're like, you're going to go, Chrono? Okay, let's fire this machine back up. So you got to suspend your disbelief just a little bit. That's putting it lightly. But you got to suspend it a little bit. Beyond that, though, I just loved the wackiness of the characters and the way they come from effectively all different eras. I thought the way it played with my mind a little bit was fun. You don't see that with JRPGs nowadays, especially. Like, you see them play with themes that are more thematic storytelling pieces, like, let's talk about mental health, let's talk about bullying, let's talk about X, Y, and Z. You usually get that, where you don't get this attempt to sort of make you go, whoa, what's going on here? I'm talking about, for example, Marl or Marley. I don't know. This is the issue with sprite-based games that you've never played before, is you read the names and you develop your own headcanon on how their name is pronounced because no one speaks. It was all pixels and text. So I'm sorry if I'm saying the name wrong. But yeah, I think of the queen, we'll say. I think of her and her story, her heritage, and the impact there. And yeah, it's a story about the butterfly effect. And then I got a shot at this moment here. The trial scene is really cool. The way they kind of recounted how I didn't help out, in my case, this young girl who was looking for a cat. And she comes in, she's like, yeah, he didn't help me. Dude's an ass. And I'm like, oh, okay. Choice and consequence to some extent. Was it going to have branching story paths? Not a crazy amount, but enough to just recount I did or didn't do something is good for me, especially for a game this old. So I was very impressed on that behalf. But overall, this game has really lived up to its heritage. I appreciate it a lot. I think it does a lot of things that I see a lot of people give credit for, but it's usually it's just so good, right? It's how I get with like KOTOR. It's how I get with Persona 5 Royal. You just start to lose the words because you're so in love with it. Oh, I love it. It's great. Don't you get it? So that's why I love doing these things, because I feel like I could help put into words what other people are feeling as a newcomer. If I end up liking it, certainly there will be one of these videos where I play a game for the first time and I don't really enjoy it as much. Knock on wood, there's no wood around me, but knock on invisible wood, I have yet to have that moment. So we'll see if it happens throughout 2022. But anyway, those are just my thoughts on Chrono Trigger as someone who has played it for the first time. Certainly looking forward to hearing your thoughts on all of this in the comments down below, so please do fire away. And with that, I'll talk with all of you very soon. Catch you in 2022. Peace out.